such a treat for us. I'm delighted to welcome Doug Collins, an international newspaper reporter, a man who had a bravery medal, I believe. I'm trying to do it without the script, from World War II. I think he was imprisoned and escaped a few times, but he doesn't want me to talk about all of these things. Really, this man needs no introduction. His talk alone is going to tell you the wonders of Doug Collins.
Thank you very much, Anne, and ladies and gentlemen. And as Churchill said of Attlee, he's a very modest man, and he's got a lot to be modest about. Well, you know, it's no news that Canadians are a confused and demoralized lot these days. I can't think of any time in the past 40 years when people have been so fed up. And the immigration fiasco contributes to that state of mind. For let's make no mistake about it. Immigration is more important than any of the other ills that afflict us. It's more important than the interminable wrangling over the Constitution, which nobody understands anyway. More important than whether Quebec goes or stays. More important than official bilingualism, which admittedly is a gross fraud on English Canada or on Ethiopian Canada, or wherever it is we are these days. It's more important than the fact that we are bankrupt. For when you change the human content of a country, you are destroying its soul. And I don't think I'm being too dramatic about it when I say that we are well on our way to becoming a third world country or some kind of Lebanon. Vancouver certainly is beginning to look as if it were part of the Orient. Toronto, once the Queen City of English Canada, is beginning to look like a mishmash of the Caribbean, Hong Kong, or New Delhi. The Anglo content of that city, once dominant, is now a minority. And all of this has happened without as much as a by your leave. The people of this country never asked for it, any more than they asked for the goods and services tax or a lot of other things that they don't want. It was simply done to them or for them and against them. Those of you who live in Alberta may yourselves not be fully aware of what is happening, but you would be if you were the only white child in a Vancouver classroom, or a resident of East Vancouver, or were parents who had moved out of downtown Vancouver to the suburbs in an attempt to escape it all. You might even be aware of it if you were a liberal columnist working for the Vancouver Sun, because I was surprised recently when such a columnist came out the other day saying that the future of his city looked like that of the wasteland of Los Angeles or Detroit. I'm not going to drench you with figures because I want you to stay awake, but some figures are necessary. And the immigration statistics for 1990 exemplify what I'm talking about. In 1990, we got 212,000 new arrivals. Of those, 88,000, or about 42%, came from Asia. A 16% increase over the previous year. 38,000, or 18%, were from Africa and the Middle East, an increase of over 22%. 28,000, or 13%, were from South America, up nearly 11%. Only 43,000, or about 20%, that is about 1/5, were from Europe, down 0.6%. The UK, once our biggest source, provided only 3.8%, also a decrease from the previous year. And you have to bear in mind that this has been going on ever since the immigration system was changed in 1967 to permit anyone from anywhere to come in. So there is the face of the future, and it's not the kind of face you are used to. In short, traditional immigration, the sort you got from Europe, the old white Commonwealth, and the US, has been abandoned. 80% of the immigrants now come from other sources, and that will soon be 90% or more. A neat reversal, considering that between 1946 and 1967 it was 90% from Europe and other traditional sources. To make matters worse, the McDougall woman increased the intake to 250,000 a year over the next 4 years, and that in defiance of the recommendation of the House Committee on Immigration that recommended no increase. And as I say, Canadians have never asked for any of this. The politicians and social engineers decided it for us. Bear in mind, too, that from start to finish, this has been a program of deception and fraud. When the system was changed, we were told that only skilled people would get in. Almost overnight, the very opposite happened. I am not one to believe in conspiracies, and perhaps this didn't start out as a conspiracy, but it has become one. You know, Doug Fisher, the former NDP House leader in Ottawa, and now a columnist for the Toronto Sun, is not a sensationalist. In fact, he's quite a dull man. But he reported a long time ago that Tom Kent, one of Lester Pearson's right-hand men and a failed politician who later became Deputy Minister for Immigration, Kent said that one way of breaking up Tory Toronto was through immigration. If that is true, and I'm sure it is, the plot was successful. One result has been, of course, that the Tories now kiss the backsides of the ethnics even more than the Liberals did, which takes some doing. The ethnic vote is everything. The ethnic vote is everything. Jerry Weiner, the culture-busting minister for multiculturalism, told a Tory conference in Edmonton in 1989 that the ethnic vote was vital in 31 constituencies. So nothing must be done to upset it, not while the Canadian majority remains unorganized, at least, and afraid of the dread R word, racism, at the sound of which strong men faint. Mind you, it's perfectly all right for the minorities to be racist. Minority racism is respectable. But as far as the rest of us are concerned, it's not. And it's racist, in quotes, racist to want to retain your own values and traditions. Racist, too. Racist, too, to want Christmas observed in the schools. And that perverted view is supported not only in Ottawa, but in academia and in the media. And people have been bullied into keeping quiet. That's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say we are demoralized. Deception and fraud. That's the order of the day in immigration. Nothing illustrates it more than what has happened on the refugee front. You all remember what happened when the Sikhs and Tamils landed in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, asking how they could get taxis to Toronto, and claiming they had sailed all the way from India and Sri Lanka. The media couldn't ignore such a dramatic story, and the politicians hit the panic button, Canadians being so outraged at that mini invasion. Parliament was recalled. New laws were passed, designed supposedly to put a stop to such things. Well, having followed the immigration fiasco for 20 years or more, I never for one moment thought that the new laws would stop them. For one thing, it took Parliament all of 18 months to pass them. No one was in a hurry. Not the Liberals, not the NDP, and least of all Brian Maloney and the Tories, because they didn't really want those laws anyway. And bear in mind that there are no immigration critics in Ottawa, any more than there are any critics of Quebec. All we got from the opposition was a lot of shouting and screaming about how bad it was even to think of keeping refugees out. Some MPs even called for more. Our politicians are nothing if not abject where immigration is concerned, and hypocrites. Their big concern is their inflated pensions, not the good of the country. The result has been that some parts of the legislation have not even been proclaimed and are therefore not in effect. An example is the section dealing with people arriving from so-called safe second countries. Those lying Tamils and Sikhs, you may remember, came from Belgium and Germany, not from India and Sri Lanka. And they are still coming from safe second countries because, as I say, the Malonyites and their accomplices have seen to it that that part of the Act has not been proclaimed, again in response to ethnic pressures. The whole exercise has been ineffective. It's been an exercise in planned failure and a massive hoax that the media have failed to label as such. A new bureaucracy was set up called the Immigration and Refugee Commission. The Chief Commissioner is Gordon Fairweather, a Red Tory whose first statement on being appointed was that he had not come this far in his career in order to be Canada's gatekeeper. But he's being paid $100,000 a year plus, and I think it would be a good idea if he gave us our money back. Because he has bent over backwards, sideways and forwards to let as many people into the country as possible. When the misnamed Fairweather took over, there were about 80,000 refugees in the backlog, meaning they hadn't even been screened. Today there are over 150,000, and they continue to stream in. And this is supposed to be under a set of laws that were designed to stop phony refugees coming in. But why shouldn't they continue to stream in? The word has gone around the world that we are the easiest touch in the world. Each board has 2 members, and if only one member says a person is a refugee, he's a refugee and he's in. Applicants can't even be cross-examined to see whether their stories are true. And you don't get on those boards unless you're known to be sympathetic to the new immigration setup. Even so, a board member did tell Maclean's magazine recently that people wouldn't believe how the system is being abused. If the public knew what was going on, he said, there'd be rioting in the streets. There will, I think, be rioting in the streets, but by then it'll probably be too late. It must be borne in mind, too, that most of these refugees are, as I say, phonies. They are not refugees at all, but simply people who don't want to live in their own countries. Before the new legislation came in, even Ottawa was saying that between 70 and 90% were bogus. Well, they're still bogus, but under what the media keep referring to as our tough new laws, 90% are now being admitted. Only the other day, a bunch of Mexicans and other Latin Americans arrived in Vancouver on a railway coal wagon, uttering the magic word, refugee. Canada better than US, they said. Canada easier. In US, keep asking for papers. So the flow has become a flood, undeterred by any laws that make any sense. Only a country that has gone quite mad could tolerate such a situation. But we are now the world's biggest loony bin. Take it from me. And we seem to take pleasure in our own destruction. Now, you needn't take my word for the fact that deception is rampant in this system. Deception not only on the part of the phony refugees, but on the part of the government. Charles Campbell was once the vice chairman of the old Immigration Appeal Board. He's a neighbour and a friend of mine, and he has accused both Fairweather and the McDougall woman of concealing the truth with regard to the refugee figures. At the end of 1989, by which time the flow should have been brought under control, the real figure had reached over 100,000 cases and 122,000 people, a case sometimes involving more than one person. The minister, the McDougall woman, now gone to external affairs on account of what a great job she's done on us. The McDougall woman and Fairweather was saying it was still 85,000. And Crawford McLean, former head of immigration on Vancouver Island, has stated publicly that he was told by Ottawa to use the lower figure, even though Ottawa knew it to be wrong. It gets worse, and all kinds of former officials are coming out of the closet to alert us as to what is happening, even though the media seem to ignore what they have to say. Claude Isbister, for example, a former deputy of immigration who served under 5 ministers, so he should know what he's talking about. He says that with a current backlog of 150,000 and counting new arrivals in Canada and those refugees who are being admitted from refugee camps and so on abroad, we will get a total of nearly 500,000 by the end of 1995. But each of these people will bring on in tow, on average, 6 relatives. So that means a total over the next 5 years or so of 3.5 million. But it doesn't even stop there. The system is so swamped that they've instituted a fast track, so-called, meaning that first-stage claimants needn't even be interviewed. All they have to do is to fill out a bit of paper. And then, for all practical purposes, they're in. As Mr. Isbister has stated, the system is out of control and doesn't look like being brought under control. Millions of people from all over the world could simply arrive under our laws, and that would be that because they're almost never sent back. There are 6 million people in Hong Kong, remember. That's already our biggest source, and by 1997, when the communists take over, we can be sure that immense numbers of them will turn up. All they need is a plane ticket. Take it from me. All this backing and filling by Ottawa on the refugee thing reminds me of a quote from Charles Dickens that I came across the other day. He was talking about the rotten parliaments of his day in Britain. Here are the words he put into the mouth of one MP talking to another MP. Our honourable friend knows, and did from the first know, what he meant then and what he means now. And when he said he didn't mean it then, he did in fact say he means it now. And if you mean to say that you did not then and do not now know what he meant then, or does mean now, our honourable friend will be glad to receive from you a declaration as to whether you're prepared to destroy the sacred bulwarks of our nationality. Well, we needn't worry about the sacred bulwarks of our nationality, of course, because there are none. The only sacred bulwark is how to screw the peasants. As a footnote to the refugee scam, let me point out, too, that it is a very expensive business. The old Immigration Appeal Board had 18 members, and that handled the refugee claims. The new Immigration and Refugee Board has 279 members, each of whom is being paid between $65,000 and $80,000 a year. Nice work if you can get it. And that's not counting the welfare bill for people upon whom this bankrupt country heaps pots and pans, TV sets, free accommodation, free Medicare, and free language training. That bill amounts to about $200 million a year in Ontario alone. Here's an example from a newspaper clipping here of what they get. There's an immigrant, some Chinese guy writing in saying what a wonderful country this is. I am happy with all the things the government gives us. We got children's allowance and old people's pensions, Medicare. To start up a business, we got good advice and also grants. We get grants and help to learn and to help educate us in the language. The government sends people to help us when we arrive by plane. They tell us about these things and where to apply. The government of Canada is very good to us. Canada is a wonderful country. Yeah. Anyway, the refugee swindle is only one aspect of the immigration disaster. There are some things that would be funny if they weren't tragic. There's the case of the female East Indian immigrant from Kenya who was made a citizenship judge, and the Englishwoman who appeared before her hoping and asking to become a citizen. The English lady had been in this country for 25 years, but when she applied for citizenship, she was told she didn't know enough about Canada and that she might profit from taking some language lessons. Whether the East Indian lady meant that she should take some Urdu lessons or not, I don't know, but that's what it said, take some language lessons. Now, I wouldn't have believed the story if I hadn't seen the documents, but there it was. So I talked to the Englishwoman, and her English was as good as anyone's. Part of her trouble, she told me, was that she couldn't understand what the East Indian woman was saying. So I interviewed the East Indian. I'm nothing if not tenacious, also modest, of course, but I'm tenacious too. So I interviewed the East Indian lady, and I too didn't always get what she was saying. Several times I had to ask her to repeat herself. And by the way, she's being paid about $60,000 a year for turning down English people, if I may be cynical about it. And even she didn't quite know why she had the job. But I know why she got it. She got it because putting immigrants like her in positions of power is another feature of multi-cult, any-cult Canada. Affirmative action, in other words, and another form of discrimination against whites. The Englishwoman told me, by the way, that she had raised 2 daughters in this country, had paid her taxes, had never been in trouble with the law, and had led a totally moral life. She also said that Brian Maloney could now stuff his citizenship. She didn't want it. And an interesting thought occurs to me here. I wonder how many East Indian immigrants there are in Quebec telling white French people that they can't be citizens. I also wonder how many East Indians that East Indian woman has turned down. I was too shy to ask. But we shouldn't be surprised by such a story. When Trudeau was in power, he appointed Anne Cools to the Senate, an institution that she still decorates. She was an immigrant from the West Indies and a communist who helped to burn down Sir George Williams University in the 1960s. You may remember all that. Trudeau's idea of a joke, no doubt. As I say, we are the loony bin capital of the world. The citizenship courts are a waste of money, of course. The whole immigration system and its offshoots are a waste of money, amounting to billions. Grants are handed out to any ethnic group that holds its hand out. The Ethiopian Society of Winnipeg, the National Council of Ghanaian Canadians, the Workers of Colour Support Network, the National Council of Jamaicans, the Canadian Jewish Congress and its many allied organizations, although why they would need the taxpayers' money is beyond me. And we're supposed to be broke, but we're never broke enough not to be able to provide the taxes with which lick-spittle politicians can buy votes. Another offshoot is the human rights nonsense. Any visible minority person who doesn't get a job or is passed over for promotion can yell discrimination and have an employer on the carpet. Max Yalden, the Canadian Commissioner for Human Rights, another fat-cat bureaucrat, is another star in the race relations and immigration industry. He goes out actually beating the bushes for business and accuses Canadians of being racist. We have a West Indian woman appointed at another fat salary to head the National Council on the Status of Women. Her first statement on getting the job was that Canadians are a bunch of racists. All very confusing. Seem that we are being drowned in any way in an alien flood. In fact, of course, a lot of the new immigrants are damn sight more racist than anybody else. But minority racism, as I say, is okay. Ottawa has even made it dangerous for us to oppose it, hence the hate laws. In the new Canada, incongruity is piled on incongruity, lies on lies. Ottawa claims that all races are equal and that it wouldn't dream of treating one race any differently from the other. What a crock. The truth is that the rules have been fixed to favour immigrants from the third world and that we must adjust to them, not they to us. And that is a deadly thing that affects the numbers. In third world cultures, they're big on the family and the extended family. In the white cultures, it's not the same. An immigrant from Europe would bring his immediate family with him, but not the whole tribe. But the family reunification program devised by Ottawa at the behest of the ethnic associations is designed to permit just that. Immigration officials will tell you that whole villages have been practically emptied in that way in India. So about half of the immigrants now coming in are relatives of people already here. It's a never-ending cycle over which immigration officers have no control. Those relatives come in as of right. In the meantime, the Europeans have to climb an Everest of red tape. I've come across dozens of such cases, even though I don't go out looking for them. Only the other day I came across a well-qualified British nurse who couldn't get in, even though we need nurses. If she came from Fiji, I'm sure she'd probably be okay. And there's an association in Vancouver that has come across hundreds of cases like that of the nurse. To make matters worse, one of the McDougall woman's last acts as minister was to cut back on independent immigrants. And it was the independent immigrant who did so well here before all this nonsense started. The independent knocks at the door and has skills to offer. Now he can't get in unless he has a job to come to, and he can't get a job to come to unless it's been nationally advertised and can be proved that no one else is available for it. The new minister is making noises, new immigration minister that is making noises about changing that, but I'll believe it when I see it. Right now, it's a catch-22 situation for European immigrants, if ever there was one. There was an instance in Vancouver not long ago involving a British butcher. He was a married man with 3 kids who had been in the city for a couple of years as a master butcher instructor for a supermarket chain. He was there on a temporary work permit, and the employer wanted him to stay. No dice. He and his wife and 3 kids had to go home. At the same time, McDougall personally welcomed a 101-year-old immigrant from Hong Kong. Here's if you don't believe me, here's the butcher sent packing. That's in the Vancouver Sun. And here, woman 100 joins exodus to Canada. And that's from the South China Daily Morning Post. So what is happening is that we let in hundreds of thousands of the unskilled and illiterate from third world countries while denying entry to the skilled and literate. And not only the unskilled and illiterate, also the criminals. As far back as 1972, the Chief of Police of Toronto warned that criminals were finding it ridiculously easy to get into this country, and nothing has been done about it, needless to say. Criminals are part of the immigration picture. There's almost a quota for them, I would say. You've all heard of the Asian and Hispanic gangs in Vancouver and Toronto. They include former Red Guards, in Vancouver at least, and it's known, of course, that Canada is a good place to make for. Here's a headline from the South China Daily Morning Post again, which, as I say, and story, which is published in Hong Kong. It reads, Triad boss leaves for Canada. The triads, as you probably know, being the Chinese mafia. And the story says, a notorious triad office bearer known to have ruled Wan Chai for more than 20 years has migrated to Canada with his wife and family. The man, Ngua Khan, was responsible for protection rackets involving gurney bars, illegal gambling establishments, and other night spots. There marches another future senator, no doubt. Or perhaps he will be the future senator, that is, perhaps he will be the Colombian who got 4 years for dealing in cocaine over in Ontario. He came in as a visitor, so-called, in 1985 and was convicted in 1987. A year later, he got out on parole. A deportation order was issued against him, but the McDougall woman, who has to be an idiot, allowed him to stay on humanitarian grounds. Last March, that's not all, last March, he was up on charges of sexual assault and uttering death threats. And if he's not made a senator, perhaps he'll get a job with the Human Rights Commission. That sort of thing isn't unusual, of course. There have been many sorts of these cases in Vancouver, and here's another one which is unbelievable, which I do believe. The Immigration Department is actually trying to stop this guy being released. But anyway, the story is that there's an order releasing from custody a suspected Asian young gang associate the department wants to deport to his native Jamaica. This chap was due to be deported to his native Jamaica when he disappeared 2 months ago after losing an appeal against deportation. However, before removal arrangements could be made, he got a detention review hearing at which adjudicator Gordon Hubley freed him on condition he posted a cash bond of $500 and the Canadian citizen also posted a performance bond of $2,000. And this guy had been convicted of assault with a nail-studded baseball bat. And yet we can't get rid of him. We can get rid of nobody, it seems to me, except the British butcher. Then there are the Sikhs. One has just been found guilty of planting a bomb in some luggage that killed 2 men who were unloading a passenger plane in Tokyo. It was a matter of pure luck that the plane itself wasn't blown to bits like that Air India plane that went down. Well, the fact is that British Columbia has for years been a headquarters for Sikh terrorism, and headline after headline tells the story of Sikh violence. And we've got a lot of them here, I will show them all. But anyway, here we are. Wife of Sikh leader shot. Prominent Sikh shot. One dead, one wounded in city gunfire. Shooting tied to temple conflicts. They apparently like to go to church to whack each other over the head. RCMP assigned 20 detectives to solve gang-related shooting, and so on and so forth. And you know, while all this is going on, it's reported in the newspapers, but the newspapers never say, well, why do we have this kind of immigration? Why don't we stop it? I say it in my newspaper, and I'm talking about the major dailies and the television networks. On the contrary, here's a loony editorial in the Vancouver Sun with regard to the McDougall woman's decision to raise immigration to 250,000 a year. And the headline is, "Immigration Hike is a Wise Move." Yeah. So then, of course, right here in Calgary, there was a triple murder recently involving Sikhs. In Toronto, Vietnamese gangs have become the scourge of Toronto's Chinatown, not to mention the existence of crack-peddling blacks in other parts of the city. It's got so bad, I hear, the policemen have resigned rather than go on any longer with a farce that is loaded against them. Because when blacks are arrested or shot at, the cops are denounced as racists by weak-minded columnists and politicians. To top things off, as it were, the NDP government in Ontario has appointed a Chinese immigrant as head of the police commission. She made the news when she refused to take the oath to the Queen, and the NDP government has obliged her by removing that oath. It all fits into the pattern of national decay, of which turbans in the RCMP are another symbol, and more than a symbol. In the Alberta legislature the other day, the NDP made a motion to congratulate the Sikh who can now wear a turban on duty. All but two of the MLAs supported the motion, which, however, failed because it needed unanimous consent. Well, congratulations to the two, but the two holdouts have naturally been denounced as racist. It apparently isn't racist, though, to decorate the heads of RCMP constables with the headgear of an alien creed. Nor is it racist to safeguard the culture of Quebec while destroying that of the rest of the country. And they are quite blatant about it. I think I've got a press release here. This is put out December the 28th, 1990, Minister of Employment and Immigration. And it says here that Quebec's demographic problems and its need for cultural security in relation to immigration policy underlie the decision to sign in the coming weeks the new accord on immigration and the temporary admission of aliens, which will come into force on April the 1st, 1991, replacing the Cullen-Couture Agreement. The primary objective of the new accord is to provide Quebec with better means to preserve its demographic weight within Canada and to ensure the integration of immigrants consistent with the distinct character of Quebec society. Well, you see, there it is. It's all right. That's a racist statement, that stuff. You know, judging if the rule for racism applies to the rest of the country, that's a racist statement. But then we don't have to worry about that sort of thing, do we? Because Quebec, as we all know, is a distinct society. We are the indistinct society. But I must also mention that Quebec is no exception to the criminal immigrants in Canada picture. According to the Montreal police, there are 300 big-time Iranian drug peddlers in Montreal who have created 10,000 drug addicts. Quite a few of them have been convicted, but we don't deport them. Well, as I say, we deport hardly anyone. Deportation has become a bad word, just as white has become a 4-letter word. In the case of the Iranians, they are not deported because they would get their heads chopped off in Iran. And those fools in Ottawa think that that would be bad. Similarly, we keep people like accused mass murderer Charles Ng in the country because he might face execution in California. We are as mad, I say, as the proverbial hatter. Oh, and one more thing for light relief. Asiatics are stealing the ducks in Vancouver's Stanley Park. Soon we'll have no ducks left. There's a lot more I could tell you, but you haven't got all day. Just one example. The Palestinian terrorist, who was found to be living here a couple of years ago, is still living here and will always be living here. Accused mass murderers, as I say, like Ng, and convicted murderers like the Playboy Bunny Girl also make a beeline for Canada. You would think the politicians would stop such things, but they don't. They are incapable of exercising even a little iota of common sense. The Vancouver Sun, in fact, spends more time worrying about how it can get the Asiatics to take the paper than it does about anything else. But I'm pleased to be able to report that they're not having much success. Circulation is going down, not up, because a lot of people like me are tired of reading the drivel they turn out. Not that it's much different in Calgary or anywhere else in the country. We have become a nation of the faint-hearted, and we must expect the fate of the faint-hearted, and our leaders hold doctorates in foolology. So what's to be done? The hour is late, but political action is the only way. Real political action. The politicians are gutless, without principle, and as I've already told you, would quite happily turn this country into another Lebanon for the sake of a vote. So you've got to scream at them. You won't get anyone anywhere near the party leaders because they make sure these days that they hide behind TV screens, unless they're speaking to selected audiences, that is. But you can still get at your MP. So when MPs hold meetings, make sure you are there. Make sure your friends are there too, and give them hell. Write letters. I know they end up in the wastepaper basket, but you needn't write a book, and it doesn't even cost you a stamp to tell them what jerks they are. As an immigration officer told me once, if the Prime Minister got 1 million letters on his desk one morning, the immigration situation would change. In addition, agitate for a referendum system, because the referendum system is the key to all or most of our troubles. If we had that, half our troubles would be over. So tell your MP that unless he or she holds out for a referendum system, he's not going to get your vote, even if the devil is the only other guy to vote for. And this above all, to thine own self be true, as Shakespeare put it, and don't mind being called a racist or a redneck. When you phone an open line, don't begin by saying, I'm not a racist, but... If anyone wants to call you names, let them, and take it from an old campaigner. Once you've been called names, there's nothing much more your opposition can do except shoot you. So once more unto the breach, dear friends, and if we ever set up the Kingdom of British Columbia, I hereby offer to be its Minister of Immigration, free, gratis, You didn't let me finish. I was going to say free, gratis, and for nothing. Thank you. Yes?
Do you think that if our Christian clergy were to preach the Word of God, we would not have as much mixing with the races?
Well, the Christian clergy, so-called, are the unchristian clergy these days, aren't they? I mean, they're sort of a city hall or something. They don't address fundamental questions, and they render unto Caesar, don't they? Not unto God. I mean, I don't speak here. I want to be honest about this too. I don't speak here as a church-going Christian, but I subscribe to the Christian culture, and so I'm very disappointed in the church. The churches once did stand behind European immigration. I mean, the Toronto Star was a leading, it's not a church of course, but it was a leading advocate of that too, but the ethnics managed to get control of that newspaper, and the churches have gone the same way. The churches are falling over themselves to bring in these people, refugees and so on. There's another bunch going into, is it Vernon or somewhere in the Okanagan? They've just decided to accept a boatload of refugees that were taken into tow by a Canadian destroyer or something.